I think my roommate may be poisoning me. I'm a 25-year-old female, and I live in Seattle. I just moved here a few months ago from NYC because of my dream job, and I was so excited. I work as a data analyst, and I make a very comfortable living. It felt like my life was finally all starting to fall into place. The only thing I needed was a place to live. I took to Facebook because I figured that might be the best place to find a roommate. I found this girl, let's call her Kate, and she seemed perfect. She said that she and her boyfriend, 29 were in a two-bedroom apartment that was very spacious in a great location, and we were looking for someone to rent the room. She said she was a 7th grade English teacher, and her boyfriend was a physical therapist. All her interests and hobbies seemed to align perfectly with mine, so I agreed to live with them. I moved in 1 month after initially finding each other, and everything started off great. Kate and I were friendly and had good conversations when we interacted. One day, however, I got home, and she seemed to be in a very bad mood. I asked her about it, and she ignored me and walked into her room. I didn't think anything of it, but then I received a text from her that read, "I know you want to fuck my boyfriend." And that's all she wrote. I was very confused because that was false. I have been cheated on in the past and know how devastating it is, so I would never want to inflict that pain onto someone else. There was more text exchanged and everything seemed to be good, but when I saw her in person, she continued to act weird, but I brushed it off. The next day, however, she began to act very nice and sweet, even offering me a smoothie because she knew I was too busy in the mornings to make breakfast. I accepted and went about my day. The smoothies continued every morning, and I just thought she was being nice. Now I am experiencing some symptoms, and I'm a bit scared. My hair has started to fall out and my hormones have been all over the place. I have developed some weird stomach issues and I get headaches all the time now. This is all new to me. It may be that the move and all this change is affecting my health, but it does seem to have started around when the smoothies did. I don't know how to catch her and see if I'm right, and I don't want to seem rude and stop accepting the smoothies if I'm wrong. I don't know what to do. I need some advice. Relevant comments. See a doctor ASAP and take the smoothie with you so they can test it. Wow, I didn't realize that they would be able to test it at the hospital. That is 100% what I will do. I also do not want to be on a true crime podcast. Thank you very much. This is beyond helpful for me. How are your nails? Have they developed ridges? I always have my nails manicured, so I don't really know if they look abnormal. I hope it's something like a bad blender and not something malicious, but also get allergy tested. I'm also hoping it's not malicious, but I will definitely be doing all that has been suggested. Rent an Airbnb and move now. I have been looking for a new place. I'd rather live alone at this point. I want to keep this brief as this experience has been traumatic. I took the advice to go to the hospital and did just that. I went to the hospital the day after posting and brought along the smoothie. They told me that they were unable to test the smoothie at this time, but they did give me a blood test as everything would still show up there. This would also indicate what is happening in my body and why I might be experiencing these symptoms. To make a long story short, turns out my roommate was adding some sort of creatine or protein powder into the smoothies because she wanted me to bulk up. So I was no longer seen as desirable to her boyfriend. I told her about what happened at the hospital and she told me everything. That is what was causing my headaches, stomach issues, and potentially the hair loss because I'm apparently allergic to it. So, technically, she was not poisoning me, just trying to make me bulky. This, however, is not the traumatic part. While the doctors were giving me all the blood tests, they found that I have leukemia. This news has been hard for me to deal with. Now, because of my new circumstances, I will be moving back home to be around my family as I go through treatment. No, this was not at all how I expected this to turn out, but maybe in a way, it's a good thing. I'm not sure, but I know I am going to be okay in the end. Thank you to everyone again for the support and concern for my well-being. Comment. Wow, this wasn't the ending I expected. Leukemia is such a terrible disease. I hope OP can go through treatment and all goes well. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. On a side note, even if the roommate wasn't actually trying to poison her, the roommate is still a massive piece of garbage for doing that. What an insecure loser the roommate is, and she needs to be reported. It's a sad state of affairs that while this is terrible, I'm relieved it was just protein powder and not pureed snails. Husband is melting down over gender disappointment. I am 13 weeks pregnant and we had our first trimester screening last week with a NIPT test. We sprang for all the genetic testing, and this morning they called and told us everything was normal and we're having a girl. I am elated. I didn't have a gender preference. I think all genders have their pros and cons, and children are going to be who they're going to be. I guess I'm more excited for the closure, that during a time when so much is up in the air, we have an answer to one of the biggest questions we have. I told my husband, and he was happy at first but said he was a little disappointed because he wanted a boy. But as the day goes on, he's telling me he really wanted a boy. more intensely than he was letting on throughout the pregnancy. Like, he would make little jokes about manifesting that the baby is a boy and telling people that he wants the baby to be a boy. He's reading all these articles online about gender disappointment that say what he's going through is normal, but his gender disappointment goes deep. For instance, we live in the southeastern US and he's afraid that our daughter will get subpar healthcare, which is a very reasonable thing to worry about, as well as what if she's LGBTQ+, and she will be mixed race, white, black, and will face discrimination for that too. But then he said he was afraid she would get predated upon, and I said that was a possibility with a boy too. And then he said that he feels less of a bond with our daughter because of sexist stereotypes on his part, like what if she likes clothes shopping? I hate clothes shopping, and you have to teach a girl how to be modest, and I can't teach her how to pee. I told him kids are going to like what they like. You can get a girl who likes trucks and a boy who likes to paint his nails. You can influence that to an extent, but kids are going to be who they're going to be. He also said that girls are harder to raise, and it's unfortunate timing that our 12-year-old niece that we take care of got a call home from the principal. Right as he was saying that, I said, I don't know if girls are so hard to raise as our niece is hard to raise. We have a small sample size and that's just bad science, lol. He then said that he was hoping for a boy because he wanted to be a better father to his son than his own deadbeat father was, and he was slightly insecure about his own masculinity and wanted a son to prove that he could be masculine and raise a masculine son. I said he should unpack that in therapy. He has a therapist he sees once a week on Thursdays. Have any of y'all dealt with this? I searched the subreddit, but most of the gender disappointment posts were from the pregnant people themselves, or relatives' friends' gender disappointment, but not the spouse. I like the advice that he'll feel differently when he holds her for the first time. But that's 6 months from now, and I got to live with him that whole time, lol. I am trying to not let him ruin my day excitement, but it's tough. Update long story short. In September, I gave birth to our daughter, and he is so in love with her. It's not even funny at all. Some things I think helped with his initial gender disappointment. He chose her name. Like some of you said, his therapist helped him realize that his anxiety was less about our daughter's gender itself, and more about his anxiety at impending parenthood. Knowing our daughter's gender made the pregnancy real for him. He was freaking out because he knows what it's like to be a boy, but a girl is the unknown of a gender. He doesn't know how to be, on top of the unknown of parenting, if that makes sense. He got over himself about his interests not being girly, and therefore having nothing in common with her, because she's a baby, lol. Her interests right now are shapes, colors, and my boobs. Why it took the birth of his baby girl for him to realize this when he's been married to me, a girl who shares his interests, for 8 years. Well, we will never know. My niece is still difficult to raise, lol, but he has the sense now to realize that she, or his tumultuous relationship with his sister or his mom, is not indicative of all girls' women. I should send his therapist flowers. A point of clarification. When he said he was afraid to have a girl because he didn't like clothes shopping, that wasn't him saying women be shopping. That was him saying he doesn't know how to shop for women's clothes. Which, fair, I've been a girl for 32 years and I haven't mastered that. Where are all the pockets? All this to say, the gender disappointment issue ended up being that he ruined one day I had back in March of this year. He loves our daughter, does not resent her for not being a boy, and didn't leave me over his gender disappointment. I just want other parents experiencing this to know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you to everyone who weighed in. I felt really validated. Comment? Ugh, I'm so glad we won't be having another story like the one where the daughter overheard her dad saying he's disappointed. She's a girl. My mom was very open about wanting boys. I am the only girl of 8 kids, and I was a twin. My twin brother also happened to be one of her favorites. My dad probably saw my heart breaking, and he always told me how he wanted more girls. It meant everything to me. Gender is such a bullshit reason to exclude or be excited. I have a backup plan. Before my BF started dating me seriously, he knew this. Now that he is my fiancé, he wants me to get rid of it. I'm not doing it, and I don't understand why I should. I have always had a backup plan. My backup plan includes a place to live, money for general expenses, and a rainy day fund. It's more complicated than that, but that is the gist of it. I like having it, and I have explained to previous partners that I have one, and I let them decide if they're okay with it. My fiancé knew this before he started dating me exclusively. He knew that if we ever got married, I would require a prenuptial agreement and a request that this backup plan stays intact. A couple days ago, he told me he wasn't okay with this plan any longer. I don't think that's fair. He comes from a wealthy family and the prenuptial agreement protects him, and I should have something that protects me. I'm finding myself really angry about this because I was an open book about this every step of the way, And now I feel like he's changed his mind. He says that having this plan makes it seem like I will leave him while I think it protects me. I'm annoyed because it's not fair to me to change your mind when you knew my expectations from the very beginning. Edit. I put this post up because I was annoyed that he essentially told me this on Friday, minutes before our meeting with the lawyers. I was and am annoyed, but he follows my Reddit account, so throw away. I don't tell every person about this plan, only ones that I've gotten serious with, which is a grand total of 2. The backup plan is complicated, but it doesn't screw him over in any way. It protects me, and I would be paying for the property and still contributing the same amount that he would be to our household expenses and savings. Now that he knows what the plan entails in depth, he wants to just not sign anything on either side. This is a bad idea. I would be unprotected. But so would he, and he has way more than I do. He feels like I have one foot out the door. I don't. I love him, but my dad is a divorce lawyer, and from what I've heard and seen, better to protect yourself and not need it than no protection, and then have to pick up the pieces. Both of our parents agree that a prenuptial is needed. I'm not getting rid of this plan. There's not anything that would make me compromise about this. I told him he has a decision to make because I'm not changing my mind. Yes, I told him about this post as more people have seen it. Rather, he finds out about it from me than someone else, or just being on Reddit. Update. I am making an update because I had people keep messaging me asking about it. I had to split it into 2 parts. It won't let me post as one. When I made the first post, I was angry because I felt like I had been deceived. I was honest with my fiancé from the start, and I felt like he had pulled the wool over my eyes. But I understand his perspective now, and he understands mine. It never crossed our minds to break up, and I think we both needed some time to think. I understand this is Reddit, but please don't bash my partner. I understand I was vague, but to call him names and try to tear down his character when you don't know him is not okay. I also don't know why I am clarifying things. It is honestly a little therapeutic. To clarify some things about my backup plan, I called it that because I started it at 25, I have had it for about 10 years now. I'm in my mid-30s. It is an emergency savings account, another savings account, and a property I own. I use my main job to pay for my household expenses with my fiancé, and also to fill my main savings. I have trust, but also investments as well, but my dad helps me handle those. The emergency savings are only money from additional contract jobs I take on in my profession. The other savings account is only money from rental income, some of which I use to maintain the property and pay my dad back. The property is a multifamily home, and I rent out all the units but one. The property was bought by my dad when I was 24, and I have been paying him back the purchase price with no interest for a couple of years now. The property is worth a great amount now, but my dad would only accept what he paid for it from me. He took out a loan for me because he wanted me to be set up financially. I'm paying him back even though he already paid the loan off a long time ago. There's no way I would be able to buy that property now, or even 5 years ago, since house prices have skyrocketed where I live, and I'm grateful that my dad did that for me. I will finally pay off the loan in about 8 months before I get married. It's taken me so long to pay my dad back because he insisted that I prioritize setting myself up financially rather than paying him back. The property is also a 15-minute walk to the nearest hospital and close to the city center, so it is easy to rent out to medical students. I keep one unit open because of events. I make a killing when there are events or when big artists tour, and 2 examples are the recent Beyoncé and Taylor Swift tours, where I made a lot on the days they were in my city. If there are no events where I think I can make a good amount, I rent it out to travel nurses in 3-4 month periods once or twice a year, but realistically there could be a couple weeks or 2-3 continuous months during the year where it sits empty. Overall, though, I make a substantial amount from this property. I can't take credit for this strategy because my dad is the one who helped me set up the apartment and manage it. My partner and I come from vastly different economic backgrounds. His family has generational wealth, and he can't remember a time they didn't. I grew up firmly middle class until my parents' divorce, and then it was a struggle for a while. His home life was relatively stable with a mom and dad. On the other hand, my dad tried his best, but my birth mom made my childhood tumultuous, both emotionally and mentally. The difference with how we think about money became very noticeable when we were planning our wedding. We had been discussing what type of flowers we would like, and then I started talking about the budget and stated that I thought 30-40K was good overall to pay for a wedding and an amount where we could easily afford it. He thought I meant 30-40K for flowers, and he and his parents didn't budget the amount and just said okay. I clarified what I meant, and I would never ever pay that amount for just flowers. When it comes to the plan, my fiancé knew about it as soon as we were exclusive. I don't agree with people saying I shouldn't have told him. To protect my assets in the prenuptial agreement, I had to. I also told him because I felt he deserved to know. As we got more serious, especially with marriage, I told him more after talking to my dad and finding out what was okay to say, so that he understood the extent of the plan. The reason I kept saying the backup plan was complicated was due to the prenup my dad came up with. It is very long and protects me very well, and my fiancé was, in his view, not prepared for the extent of it. My dad and I went to this extent due to what he had seen people do in divorces, but also mainly due to his divorce that affected us both. It didn't help that I further joked that my dad tried to cover for any loopholes, including asking his associates to look over the document and revising it if one was found. What I saw as protection, my fiancé saw as me having an out since my dad went to such an extent. The short part of it is that my fiancé was insecure about it. He grew up with a dad as the breadwinner, and he was raised with this idea that he should be a provider, and my plan rattled him, because it showed him that financially, I didn't really need him. He told me he didn't realize how much of himself he had tied into this provider role and felt extremely insecure because he didn't know what he now brought to the relationship. When he found out about the sometimes empty unit, he felt more uneasy because he, even though I have and will always have a job, wanted and planned to take care of me. His idea of scrapping both prenups was his way of trying to say that he trusted me and that I should trust him. If he was willing to go without a prenup, knowing I could get a substantial amount of his assets, then it would show me that he would never try to hurt me financially or otherwise. I told him I saw it at the time as extremely manipulative due to him doing it before we met with the lawyers, and he apologized because he honestly just panicked. Update: I explained the reasons I wanted a prenup. The first was because I was with him when his brother got a divorce, and to put it nicely, the brother's ex-wife financially got eviscerated. I'm not going to talk about their relationship, but financially, she just kept being taken back to court over and over until she said she couldn't afford a lawyer anymore. From the way his brother bragged about it, she wasn't left destitute, but she paid a significant amount in legal fees and left with a far smaller settlement. His family would have bankrupted her because they had the wealth to wait her out. They could have gone to court forever, and they had a prenup. His brother's divorce was never on his radar as a reason why I was so persistent about the prenup. Basically what I said was there was a disparity in wealth here, and I know he would never do this to me, but I would feel better protected with one. The second reason is that though my dad is a divorce lawyer, and upper middle class now, he went through a pretty bad divorce with my birth mom, and I witnessed it for 3 years. My dad is first generation, married young, and had no prenup. What I saw from 9/12 was my birth mom, I no longer consider her a parent, completely try to annihilate my dad, and she didn't care that her child's well-being was on the line. She didn't care what financial damage she did even to herself as long as my dad suffered. I'm talking wiping out savings, taking loans and maxing out credit cards, getting tickets and getting the car towed by parking in an incorrect place and leaving the car to accumulate fees. She called CPs, said my dad was a pedophile, and turned on me when I wouldn't back up her lies. And all of this financially devastated my dad for years during and after the divorce. We were struggling for years, and I think people don't realize how quickly you can go from stable, even upper class, to nearly homeless or homeless. People don't realize, if you have never been in that position before, how an ugly divorce not only devastates people financially, but also socially and professionally. My dad lost clients and lost income, and it took many years to rebuild it back. We only survived because my grandmother, dad's side, sold her home. I told my fiancé that I basically went from having a parent who showed me love for 9 years to a person who hated me and decided to destroy 2 people, my dad and me, because a marriage ended. There was no way to stop her, and a prenup could have stopped a lot of the financial damage. I again told him I knew he wouldn't do this to me, but I needed him to understand where I was coming from. Also, if anyone reading this says I'm damaged from this and should have been in therapy from age 9, I know, but it's hard to pay for therapy when you're poor. It is the last priority over having a roof over your head and food and basic necessities. I did get into therapy when I was 19. My fiancé and I talked for several days, and anytime he had a question or needed clarification, I answered it. I didn't realize how much seeing the extensive prenup affected him, and he didn't realize why I was so insistent on it. Overall, he knows that though I love and trust him, that I have to protect myself, and he should too. He knows why I'm insistent on signing a prenup, but also knows that I'm choosing to be with him based on who he is as a person, and not what he can provide for me. I now understand why he felt insecure, and I have tried to alleviate that, and I'm constantly reassuring him of the reasons I'm with him. I also asked him to come see the property and unit with me, and he was really excited about that. I told him that I don't plan on us breaking up ever, and I have a plan for leaving the assets to our future children. Finally, I really see how, when it comes to people he loves, he leads with emotion while I'm more logical, So we both are going to try to be more mindful of that as we move forward. We both finally signed the prenups, and his only stipulation was to stop calling mine a backup plan, and instead call it a I'm never going to need this plan. We are good, and I'm glad this happened because it showed both of us that we need to work on our communication more outside of our counseling. We are going to keep planning our wedding, and I'm excited to begin this next part of our lives together. Comment. I know this is a very small aspect of the overall story, but 30-40K for flowers for a wedding alone? How fucking rich is this family? My eyebrows went up, and then down again while reading this. I'm glad they communicated and got to understand each other's POVs. How rare to see on this app. And of course, the renaming of the plan seemed like a great middle ground given that other ideas involving giving up her very practical backup plan would be totally unfair. We have come to the end of our story. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Tell us what you think about this story in the comments.